Well, for more insights into the challenges of running a Black-owned business, I'm joined via Skype by Jeannine Cook. She's an experienced shopkeeper as well as author, writer, and advocate. A pleasure to have you on, Jeannine.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here with you.
So first of all, talk about how the pandemic has really impacted Black-owned businesses. How many have been forced to close?
So the numbers that I'm seeing are around about 40%, and it's even higher for Black women-owned businesses. And for us, our business had just opened February 2020. In 6 weeks, we were told we needed to shut our doors. And so we have spent the entire year working on new and innovative ways to keep our customers, to build our base, to make our voices heard, and to continue to make sure that the issues at hand are dealt with.
And obviously this was very sudden, a lot of people sort of thrown into this. In terms of access then to the stimulus for businesses that came out, how did Black businesses fare versus, say, other communities?
From my understanding is not so well. For us, we were so new that we weren't a year old, so we didn't meet many of the guidelines. We also didn't have the number of employees that you were required to have, and that went for many of the other businesses in our position. And so we were in flux. We never got any of that PPP money.
So what if businesses like yours that didn't qualify, what have you been trying to do to stay afloat?
Yeah, so what Harriet's did, one thing is that all the furniture that we have in our bookstore, all of the books that we have in our bookstore, for months at a time, we took it outside every single day. We would build a bookshop on the corner, and we would allow people to do what we call grab and go, so that we could still safely make sure that people had access to the information and the resources that we sell, and also that they were healthy and able to follow the COVID guidelines. And so that was just one example. Of course, we also have an online store, which was essential for the work that we do now. And then we did something called Essentials for Essentials, where we supported neighbors, community members with purchasing books and donating them to essential workers in hospitals. And we ended up working in 4 hospitals across the city, making sure that our essential workers had access to books and information. And so we were on top of it. We were trying this, trying that as much as possible.
It certainly has been a time for communities to lean on each other. I want to talk now about President Biden's call for assistance to small and minority-owned businesses. Does that go far enough?
I think that one of the things that we know is to be true is that the community has to support the community, and that the solutions to the issues that we're dealing with have to come from us, and that we have to be the ones that take on how we're going to make sure that the next steps happen. One of the things that I know has been a big obstacle for small businesses like myself is that we don't own our own buildings, right? And so when a pandemic hits out of the blue, or when any other crisis comes, you're in a lot of trouble because you're still trying to make rent. And so one of the things I think would be really important for President Biden to think about is how to make sure that businesses like myself and others, people in our position, have ownership.
And to that point then, talk about Black leaders' calls for more targeted help. What else do you think is really needed to really address some of this economic inequality that's been exacerbated by the pandemic?
Yeah, I specifically think that land ownership would help a whole lot, right? Once upon a time, Black people in America were promised 40 acres and a mule, and what I have never seen that promise delivered. And I think that with 40 acres, we'd be able to do an impeccable amount of work on our own communities.
And we certainly did see people like Ice Cube putting that to whoever was going to end up winning the election, that they really do need to focus on the Black agenda, regardless who ended up in the White House. So I wanted to now talk about some of these Black-owned businesses that were spotlighted during the social justice movement, obviously drew a lot of attention. What kind of growth or momentum did they see after that? And the commitments, did people stick to them?
I think that a lot of people have noticed, at least for us with the bookstore, that they had a tremendous amount of ignorance around issues of race and class in this country. And so they used books and have been using books as a way to self-emancipate and make sure that they knew the information that has been what has been causing a lot of the conflict in our country. And I think another thing that was essential for us is we went out to the streets. We took books, as many books as we could, and we gave those books out to organizers and activists on the ground. Because for us, it was like, okay, after this emotional hotbed moment is over, we want a sustainable plan, and that comes through education.
Now, I want to talk about this 15% pledge. According to the organization 15% Pledge, Black people in the U.S. make up nearly 15% of the population. So they're calling on major retailers to commit a minimum of 15% of their shelf space to Black-owned businesses and products. What are your thoughts on this approach and the impact that that could have?
Yeah, I think that it's really important that these larger institutions think about the ways that they have an effect on these our smaller businesses. So, for instance, one thing that a larger institution may decide to do is say, "Hey, we're going to take our hands out of certain industries and let folks on the ground, folks that are, for instance, a bookstore, let the indie bookstores have the book industry because we can afford to move out of that industry and still do okay, whereas that is our only industry, right?" And so that's an example of something that can be done in real time that they can, folks can actually, big institutions, big corporations can do that. I think that, it would be great to have 15% of your shelf space, but I think more importantly is that we have our own space, that we have, and that those big institutions come and invest in us as opposed to us trying to be inside of their spaces. But every little bit helps, of course.
Now, one sector that wasn't hit as hard as most is the tech sector. I want to talk about black creators in the tech space. Just very quickly, what sort of progress or perhaps even problems have come to light in that area?
One of the things I've seen a lot is our cybersecurity, right? Making sure that we are able to protect ourselves, our business, and many others during the pandemic were hacked, right? And so now we're wondering, okay, how do we make sure that we take care of ourselves and that we're not a vulnerable group in the digital sphere? And so that's something that I think that the tech industry should be thinking about, especially for small businesses.
All right, thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on. Jeannine Cook there, shopkeeper, author, writer, and
So
advocate.